Well, hello again. A new year, a new opportunity to continue the journey of working with you all and identifying what I see as some of the key elements that make the difference between great leadership and adequate leadership. And that's not to be a criticism, but rather, how do you see the world? How do you see your role as a leader? And how can you benefit from learning from others, either through their writings, and I'm going to share some books that I think are worthwhile considering to read, and your experience working with other people, and being mindful every time you are with them. They're watching you as a leader, but also, and equally important, is you're watching them. And what can you learn from their interactions amongst themselves, with you, and all that you're trying to achieve in your organization? It's very important. And over my time, that what goes back to when I was just a young kid in school. And my leadership journey, well, I'm very fortunate, started then. I was an exchange student in Germany. I hate to tell you this, in 1962. Came back, had a series of speaking engagements, served on a student council. That transitioned into my time at UCLA as an undergraduate student, and my senior year serving as the president of our Sigma Nu House there and on the Interfraternity Council. And then off into grad school. That gave me a much broader perspective then of how do leaders fit within these organizations we call healthcare, and how do they interact. And during that time, I was very fortunate, due to my great advisor, who became my chairman of my doctoral committee, my friend. We've worked together. He's my mentor. And believe it or not, I have known this gentleman for almost 58 years. Arnold D. Kaluzny, great guy. When they rolled the dice when I was a master's student, I got him as my advisor. And he approved a group of us being able to go over to the United Kingdom. And I was working or learning at the Welsh National School of Medicine for 8 weeks about the National Health Service every day. And that gave me a great opportunity to see sort of the framework of how they operate, their decision-making, and how they tend to work with the environment that they're in. And I was able to bring that back into my own time. Followed closely by my participation as a medical service corps officer in the United States Navy for 22 years. Never intended to make it a career. Second tour was as the quote-unquote preventive medicine and environmental health officer for all the Marines in Vietnam. Learned so much there. It was tough. My team that I had, we covered everything from Dong Ha, which was the DMZ of North Vietnam, down to a quaint little place called Chu Lai out on the beach. Well, it was okay. Any event, during that time, I was able to use a lot of my training in both my undergraduate and master's program in public health, and especially my learning. And I have to give a giant thank you to a guy named Dr. Schottland at the medical school at UCLA, where I took epidemiology, because we were constantly investigating foodborne illness outbreaks, other kinds of intensive diseases that were compromising the medical readiness of the troops. And in addition, we had responsibility for malaria control, which was not fun, and other diseases. We had to do all the testing for the Vietnamese workers that we hired as part of our status of forces agreement, and about 90% of them were TB converters. Not many of them with active tuberculosis, but we had to keep our eyes open all the time. And then in addition, we did volunteer work at a local Christian hospital run by a Christian organization. And that was a wonderful time to sort of see the young kids that came there, help out any way we could. And then one of the other key elements of the team that I led was that we worked with the United States State Department and the Department of Agriculture, going out usually about once a week to villages and helping them to establish good, clean sanitation systems, how to monitor that in their villages, because it was pretty tough. And during that period of time, by the way, a lot of the Vietnamese that were in the north tried to escape the north, come south, and one of the most logical places for them to settle down was in Da Nang or outside Da Nang. And the base I was on was about 7 or 8 miles north of that, at the base of what was called the Hai Vong Pass, and affectionately known in the area as Rocket Valley for very good reason. But we learned a lot. I learned a lot, and it gave me a different perspective when I got home about what I was going to do. And eventually stayed on active duty, retiring as a Navy captain. That's in 06. In, I hate to tell you this, 1990. The Navy was a great place. For me, I learned a lot, had some great opportunities, 2 major projects involving Navy medicine, tours in Washington, D.C. and England, when we were responsible for all the operational elements of Navy medicine in Europe. And then that opened doors to getting certified as a hospital person for the Joint Commission. And I worked for them in their organization. It was a subsidiary. At that time, it was called Quality Health Resources. And we were the good guys. We went out to hospitals and helped them prepare for the Joint Commission. And it was a great deal of opportunity to learn about whole different types of leadership styles and how they worked. I'll give you one quick example. We were down at the Methodist Hospital in Houston, and typically we would go in, sit down with the CEO, chief of nursing, the QI coordinator, and anybody else that he or she wanted to have the input from. And he was talking very, very clearly about the vision, values, and goals, objectives of their hospital. And at one point, I asked him, I said, "Well, how is that working out with the staff?" And he said, "I can say without question, everyone in this hospital knows the vision. They know what their role is in achieving that vision, and they believe and they practice the values that we hold very dear." Well, I thought, okay, I'm going to pull a Clint Eastwood. I'm going to make my day. So one of the days we were there, I stood just outside the cafeteria where the staff would come out, and I just randomly pick someone and pull them aside and talk to them for just a few minutes just to find out what I could. At the end of our visit, I apologized to the CEO. And I said, "I want to give you credit. Almost 99% of the people walking out of that cafeteria on your staff know the vision. They know the values that vision is supported from. Those values create the alignment for the strategic initiatives and the healthcare services that you're providing for all the communities that you provide service." And I say, that's credit to you and your leadership. And you know what? That's happened before. It's happened since. The hospital where I currently do veterans visits at the Naval Health Medical Center in Huntersville, North Carolina, just next door to where we live. That CEO, Mike Riley, has done an equal job, if not better. So when you walk in that hospital, everybody is friendly. Everybody is positive. And they're thinking about you, not themselves. And that really provides the kind of environment that I think you have the best opportunity to exercise your leadership skills. And I'll come back to that. So today, I'm going to reflect on some of the information that I've gathered over time, my perspective and behavioral guide that I've developed in my own leadership journey. So the key points are the following. Overall, there's 4 key elements: vision, values, goals, and objectives. Pretty simple. Vision is about what I can see that I'm going to help you to see as a leader. And so you see how your role plays. And when I worked for Walt Disney, I learned from day one. Walt was still there, although he had passed away a couple years earlier. And during that time, just a summer job, it was very obvious that when you were hired by Walt Disney, you knew the vision, you knew the goals and objectives, and you knew how your role, when you got into costume, the uniform of the day, if you will. I was on this jungle cruise, my primary responsibility as a skipper and guide down the rivers of adventure. And every day that we got there and we walked out into the park, Walt would remind us, you are on stage. Everything you do, everything you say is a reflection on Disney and Disneyland. So you better do it right. And he was right. And when you do that, the message is when you're in your office by yourself, you're thinking about things, you're working on reports or whatever, you're off stage. And that's okay. When you walk out of that office, as a leader especially, every eye is on you. Every ear is listening to what you're saying. And you have to live the vision. You have to live the values. And you have to articulate clearly what the goals and objectives are. And by the way, I learned early on that when you walk out of your office, don't make a decision while you're walking around. Wait till you get back to the office. Think about what you're going to do. Sometimes those decisions you make just walking around aren't the best. But my point is that Walt had it. His vision was to create a family-friendly entertainment opportunity. And that's what we had to do. And I remember when I was commissioned out of grad school in the Medical Service Corps of the Navy, putting on that uniform the first time, starting to do the work that I was assigned to do, it came back to me that we had our own vision. We had our own values, and those were rock solid. You lived those values. If you violated them, you were in trouble. And for 22 years as a commissioned officer, it was great. It really worked. And so when I think about vision and values, they're the infrastructure. They're the foundation upon which everything else emerges and is built. And it's important that those are indisputable. They don't change unless the leader changes them, tweaks them, whatever. But for everybody else in the organization, they govern the way we behave, what we do, how we set our targets, and how do we interact with each other. And so that's very important. Goals and objectives, however, can be fully disputable because you want to be able to make changes as the environment changes. A good example was what happened in 2020. The pandemic hit. Every organization, especially the healthcare organizations in the United States and around the world, had to make some significant changes in how they interacted with the communities they served and how they did best to protect those patients who were hospitalized as a result of side effects or something involving the COVID virus. So as a leader, the other role that you have is clearly gaining and developing alignment so that people who are in your organization see what you can see, believe what you believe is important. And when two of those are in alignment with one another and highly correlated, they then create the opportunity for the confidence to achieve what we're going to achieve without question. And let's go back again. A leader's responsibility is to provide added value every single day, on target, on time, every time, without fail. In the Navy, we used to refer to that as a zero defect environment. But the important part is, if you know that and you act that, when you walk out of your office and you're going around and you're working with the team that you're with in meetings, setting strategy, those people will follow. They'll see it and they'll be glad to be part of your team. And so in my world, I think that what I've done in my own journey, I've tried to replicate it as best I can. We all have mistakes. We all have failures, no question, but it's a journey. And every day that you are out there doing something very valuable, it's important to keep that reflection in your mind. Just take a quick look at some other notes. And one of the problems, I think, that challenges we have as people in organizations, and I remind young people, especially when I'm doing any mentoring, is that keep your sensors out there. If you see something you think you might want to do, step back a minute, reflect on what it is. Is it a learning opportunity? Is it something you can expand your capabilities? Then go for it. Don't mess around. Don't delay. I did that. I tell people that my career was a career of a numerous list of accidents, but nobody got hurt. What I did is I was very fortunate, both my active duty time, post-active duty, the work that I've done in Europe, especially on leadership programs, and still mentoring students for Maastricht University in their global leadership for environmental health in European public health in Europe, and also some of the other work I've done in developing a competency-based leadership model for the European Union. That was a great experience. I was one of the people they brought on board as a contributing author, if you will. And I'm still involved with my folks, my great friends in Romania and Maastricht, the United Kingdom. It's been a wonderful journey. So I'm going to show some of these books that I have found be useful. I'll just make a couple of comments about them. And I would be remiss if I didn't show this book. This is my book, Leading for Value, and it's available out on Amazon. And it basically is structured around 4 models of leadership activity that I have created over the many, many years of my own time in that role. And so there's 4 models. There's 50 exercises plus that I've used, many of which I created, but all of those I have used with great success in the organizations I have been consulting, both in healthcare, financial services, and interestingly enough, 7 years with an organization called Starcon International, a mechanical services company in the oil industry. We took that organization from $80 million gross revenue and a 3% margin in 7 years to $245 million and a 5.5% margin. And the credit goes to Mike Uremovich, the CEO, Dale Kuntz, and the rest of the leadership team across that organization. For me, it was a great learning experience, as you can imagine. But one of the things I learned was that as an outsider, one of the most important things you can do, and this happens when you take on a new leadership role, is step back a while about 90 days and do as much learning as you can, because that's very important. One of the books that I highly recommend called Good to Great, Jim Collins, and it's one of those books that talks about, in this case, built to last. And the idea is that leaders have different levels. And the top level is level 5 leadership. And it's all about personal will and humility. And keep that balance in mind, you'll do well. One of the other books, which I think is a great book, is Edward de Bono's 6 Thinking Hats. This is about creativity and innovation, or working in an organization. And believe it or not, I included this in the executive leadership programs that I developed for what was then the old Wachovia Bank years ago. And the gentleman, Mac Everett, who was my executive that I worked with, I was the academic side. He was sort of the guy in charge during the day to help. And I guarantee you, I think Mac had more fun than anybody with those 6 thinking hats. And what it does, it helps to make a productive dialogue, and it works. And so when you're an organization that's adopted it, you can tell because sometimes things will happen and they'll say, oh, yeah, you remember that's the green hat or the white hat. And it's very important. Now, two books are by a lady by the name of Margaret Wheatley, Leadership in the New Science, Learning about Organization from an Orderly Universe. And the idea is that in the universe, there's chaos. And what leaders have to do is work within the sciences of orderliness to develop organizations that have a good sense of direction. And that's through reducing chaos and creating creative opportunities. Another one of her books, which I found pretty interesting, is called Turning to One Another. And the concept behind that is it's not our differences that separate us in our organizations. It's our judgments of each other that do. And if you think about it, if we did less of the judging upon others and rather sat back and listened to learn. I remember when I was able to completely redo the staffing that I had when I was in charge of the budget execution side, Navy medicine's budget, multi-million dollars, many, many millions. And I was able to hire a whole team and replace the people that were leaving. And I guarantee you, I got 4 ladies that were tough. And I really got a kick out of it because we wanted to have an open environment. And during that period of time, to their credit, we sat down after a few months, we were doing the work, and we created a statistical model that would be able to evaluate each month the performance of our 35 hospitals, 22 dental centers, and 15 other medical type commands. And the idea was to find those that were either 1 or 2 standard deviations above the mean in the percentage of funds that they had used each month. And what it did is it gave us an opportunity to identify and help organizations under our responsibility to overcome obstacles that they were facing. Sometimes it might mean more money. In other cases, it was just reallocating from one area to another. And it worked so well, I hate to say, that our support was from Boeing Computer Services. They took the structure of the model and turned it into a product and made money off of it. Unfortunately, we couldn't benefit from it. And then the other one is The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge and a group of people, including a very good friend of mine, Charlotte Roberts. And this is all about the learning organization. And that is chock full of all sorts of exercises and tools that as leaders you could find very helpful. So in closing today, I want to thank you for your time. The next time I'm out here, I'll probably be doing a chapter on innovation and creativity. And I've got a gentleman by the name of Dr. Tobias Gantner, German, who I met through my work with Project Hope the first time I was in Romania. And he and I have known each other now for about 13 years. And he has developed an incredible organization called Healthcare Futurists. Healthcare Futurists has both German and English. And he's doing great work with artificial intelligence. So I encourage you to go out there. And in addition, if you don't mind a plug, I have a podcast series, and the link is KAR, D as in Delta, R as in Romeo, P as in Paul, H as in Hotel, .podbean, PODBEAN, .com. So KARDRPH.podbean.com. I've got over 22 or 23 videos out there exercising the tools that I have in the book and the content. So I encourage you to take a look at those, please. If you have any ideas or want anything else, don't hesitate to send me a note. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. For me, this is a great opportunity. I want to give. And when I got promoted to captain in the United States Navy, I said, my career's coming to an end. I've achieved more than I could have ever thought through the blessings and the support of an organization that I found very, very worthwhile. And that's been with me. So my values say, give back. And that's what I'm trying to do, give back. And if you need anything else, find my website, the send me a note. Or out on LinkedIn, I'm out there, send me a note there, and we'll get connected. Thank you so much for your time. May God bless you. Bye for now.